Um, a lot of it
All
came
right.
with
Can
the
you,
first chapter, but he was
I
the one
switched
thing that
computers.
really I
Let's see if I
loved
can get it
was he
now.
was one of the first people to say our schools are not broken and stop saying that, because so many things have happened in changing in our schools that with technology and stuff that we need to be more inclined to hold on to old those old ways of what works for teaching. And then his whole, I loved it that he said, our schools are not broken. And he does say that a lot in this too, but that really got a lot of people stirred up because, we hear it so much through bad press. But I think we all know from the teacher standpoint that that is just not the situation. So it, it was kind of an uplifting moment there. Yeah.
Shelley, I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, but he did recently tweet that out as well. And I don't know if you saw the responses, but some people were very not nice back.
For whatever reason.
I know, but it's true though. There are always challenges in whatever government agency you work for, and that's true. But I love some of his stats about, our graduation rates compared to 20 years ago, and our focus on achievement compared to 20 or 30 years ago. And I mean, he has some real stats right there that kind of show that. So.
Oh, well, one of the responses just said that she disagreed with him because we're not able to meet the needs of EC students with all of his COVID closures. Well, to me, that's not an indication of our school system. We're doing the best we can in response to a completely unusual situation that we could not have prepared for.
Yeah, that's totally,
Shelley?
in the case of a natural disaster, yep.
Shelley?
Yes.
Candy can present now. She switched to computers, but she can't hear anybody. And she's looking at her settings. She was.
I mean,
I can hear you, but I can't present because I get that every time I try to present.
Yes, Candy. We can see your. They're beautiful. We see everything.
If she can't hear us, I'll tell her to look.
Let me call her.
Maybe the tab has been muted. That was my problem the other day. And it really threw me for a loop thinking it was something going on with my class, but it wasn't.
Well, while they're getting straight, I actually talked to Weston yesterday. We were asking him if the possibility that we get the DLI grant, we might be able to partner with him for some PD over a period of the next 2 years. So we were talking about.
Yeah, no, I can't hear anybody on my computer. I've never in my life.
So,
all right, so.
Anyway, I asked him if at the end he would be willing to join us for our last book study, and he is absolutely our last session, our virtual book talk. So he will be joining us on our very last call with each other, which I think is exciting. He's more than willing to partner with us on some things. He's very passionate about what he does. At least from seeing him at NC Ties and then the first 2 chapters of the book, it just comes through that this is not just a way for him to make a living. This is something he feels very strongly about.
It was fantastic. I got to go to his workshop right after he did the speech, and it was amazing. The example he used was the reciprocal teaching for that particular workshop, and some of that from that session when it's my turn when we get to that chapter. But it was amazing.
Okay, will you just stay with me and talk for me? Can you hear Tess?
Okay. Yeah, we can hear, but we can tell her we can hear her.
Go ahead. All right, Tess.
We can hear you now, Candy.
And I'm going to listen to Kathy because I can't hear anybody on my Mac. So here we go. We put up the Twitter pictures that people had sent, and if you sent one and I didn't get it, we'll make sure that we include you. Kathy and Shelley, I was trying to put yours up when everything started going white and wonky. So that's not good. Well, I was trying to get it up fast, but my computer just started dying. I asked people from the introduction, to put the words that stood out to them. And you can see the ones that are bolder are the ones that were repeated. And I put failure in red because I thought that was such a great word to include as a bold word, especially because he said failing forward is better than stagnant success.
Mm-hmm.
See, I don't know when to stop talking because I can't tell if anybody else is joining in. Does anybody have any comments about the words or anything that stood out to them? Crickets. Okay. So prior to reading Bold School, whoops. It's crickets. Okay. So what were your thoughts about blended learning before reading Bold School?
I was stuck on in first grade how to do it effectively, and the learning time that it took. It seemed like I was just doing it for the sake of doing it, using technology just for the sake of technology, not necessarily to for any particular learning goal. But when I heard his speech and then went to his job, it kind of started to make a lot of sense, and I feel like I can have more success with it now.
Mm-hmm.
Shelley, you're muted.
Everything is so slow. I'm sorry. It wouldn't even pop up there. You can hear me now? But one of the things that over the, I don't know, the last decade of watching blended learning change and move around, and what it is and what it isn't, I suppose, and more like what I think a lot of teachers were doing when they first thought about blended learning is that they were recording a lot of their lectures and putting them on video, and then asking the students, like a flipped learning situation, or they were asking, that some of that instruction can be looked at again at their time. But as a teacher in the classroom, I've seen more students and teachers try to use technology as a station. And sometimes that's, all of these ways are good ways to use blended learning, but I think they kind of move with the teacher's experiences. And I think our technology changes the way we use it in our classroom, the more familiarity we have it. So it started off as kind of a one cut and paste in my way, like, here, I'm gonna teach this, and now you all can watch that while I work with this one group. Or here is something you can do over here while I work with this one group. And I think one of the points that he brings out about blended learning is it's not just the way that we teach, it's how they learn. So looking at it as a perspective of how can the student learn through that. It took me a while to get to that point, sorry.
That's okay.
To Kim's point about it seems like their remote learning has turned into that. I understand where you're coming from. I think we were all caught off guard, and if that was the step that teachers were able to take, at least it was a step. So it might not be the end goal where we want them to be, but at least it was a step in the right direction. We've definitely all been outside of our comfort zone trying to navigate these unusual circumstances. But I like the fact is after the quote that Candy already mentioned, says successful mediocrity at the expense of innovation and progress is bad for teachers and worse for kids. And I hadn't heard it put that way, successful mediocrity. Some people are very comfortable where they are. They want better results, but they don't want to change their process. So I really love the fact that he brings it back to data and those high success rates. It's based on the results of some study, some group somewhere, and it's stood the test of time. And then if you can blend or enhance it with technology, then great. But as Shelley was saying, it's not starting with technology. It's starting with the standards and the end goal, and then you're adding the technology if it's appropriate. So.
Right.
Mhm. I have something to add to that. My favorite quote was on page 5 when he was talking about his student teaching experience. And he said that he placed way too much emphasis on the things, the bright and shiny objects, and way too little emphasis on the instructional strategies and academic outcomes. That reminds me of what Richard Allington says, is that so many teachers spend time on the stuff and not on reading and writing. So for me, in the early, in the literacy block, it's all about reading and writing. It's not always shiny and pretty, but it has to be about what the basic outcome is. And it's, for me, it's all about knowing how to read and write, not just being shiny and pretty.
Absolutely, and I don't know if anybody
Ms. Roberts-
can relate to his story, but those of us who went to NC Ties got to hear it in person, and I just felt for the guy. I've never had it. I don't think I've ever had a situation that crashed and burned as much as that one did for him with his.
That's true.
But we've all had
Yeah,
crashed and burned, and we can empathize with that. And he was trying, and the guy was honest with him after, and not everybody's comfortable with that uncomfortable conversation. It wasn't good. He didn't mean any harm in his response to the guy, but it wasn't good, and he helped him. He didn't just make the comment and turn and walk away. He helped him get better. So I liked that part of it, Kim, with that story. But yeah, definitely we can't get caught up on the props.
Right. And the enthusiasm's great,
sometimes I think that the technology
they've got to have the learning first and the engagement. Sorry.
Technology, though, for Ms. Robertson has helped me do a whole lot of guided lessons during this time.
All right, are we ready? We're going to head on. So another question I asked was to reflect on your classroom, school, or district. On what quadrant of the not strategic matrix do you see your classroom, school, district? Let's start with classroom.
So Candy, this is Christy. I don't know if you can see me or whatever, but I saw myself in both quadrants, and I think it's evolved over my when I was in the classroom. But I remember being interviewed at Moyac Middle School, and they asked me to how was I going to handle teaching, knowing the district was a one-to-one district, and I didn't even know what that meant. I came from what I thought was a fairly progressive district, and I still think that, but we were limited. We had limited access to technology, and so our technology looked like Chromebooks on a cart of 30 Chromebooks, and so you had to check them out, and it was quite laborious to be able to do that. So that first year when I worked at MMS, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how do I use these Chromebooks effectively, because that's what they came to the classroom with. So it took me quite a bit of time to transition into possibly the strategic. I'd like to think that I ended up being in the strategic part. But even with something as simple as, I shouldn't say simple, as the smart board, when I came into the district, I used the smart board primarily as a presentation or a whiteboard. I had no idea there were all these other things within it. So, one of the things that resonated with me is the fact that I love the analogy about how we don't give doctors the MRI machines and just say, here you go. Teachers' time is so valuable. And so one of my takeaways in trying to decide if I was strategic or not strategic is everything that I felt like I was doing, I had to learn on my own. And I still don't feel like I'm competent, but I'm at least a little bit more strategic today than I was 6 years ago.
And I will say, having been in the county for 24 now, it hasn't always been this way, but it definitely hurt us as a district when we lost small schools money and the instructional coordinators were pulled from the building level, because that was a large part of their position, was that ongoing PD and that transition for new staff. And then to more complicate that, we started doing staggered schedules for busing, which I get, but that also adds a layer of complexion to how do you have PD across multiple schools and still meet everybody's needs without being here until 6 o'clock at night. So I've been so impressed with how the webinars have been received and the attendance that I'm hopeful that maybe we can leverage this kind of platform, although it's not always comfortable as we see today, and it can be frustrating at times, that we can maybe use this for all of our benefit moving forward. But I also agree with you, Christy. That really stuck with me. No, we wouldn't give a doctor an MRI machine and say, figure it out. And we unfortunately do that to our teachers. I've learned a lot.
It's hard to.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay.
Somebody going to add to that, or the school or district? I think with the district, we have, in my experience, it's been, oh, we bought this here and we give you a little bit of training, and it's not enough. And I think that's an important thing that he said as well, that we not only need to be mindful of that, and I think we are now, because we're purchasing things and piloting them with a few people to see how they work, and then take it from there to start using it better, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. I mean, I agree with you, Candy. It does make sense to be that. I love the fact that he keeps using the word strategic. I'm a planner. I like plans. Plans make me feel good. Like I'm accomplishing something. So his planning and being strategic really spoke to me, and I think it has to be deliberate action, so that, like he said, and I can't remember exactly where it was, sometimes you meet success and it's just a luck, like a lottery ticket. Woo, we got successful, but there wasn't strategy, there wasn't planning. It just worked out that time. So yeah, I think us all coming together and being able to plan strategically and try to meet those needs that will be better for everybody.
Anybody else want to add into the reflection?
Yeah, Miss Davenport's
so
point is good. She said our PD is nice and plentiful, but I think the implementation follow-up piece is all missing. I agree with that.
Yes, there does.
There's
be
usually not enough time
throughout the year
to try to work with it and figure it out.
And just to speak to that, I do agree with you. Not having enough Christie's and Diane's and Kathy's to be in every building. We need to try to identify those teacher leaders who can share their expertise and support of their colleagues within the buildings until we can get to the place where we can have more support. Anyway.
You know, and I think with what we're dealing with now, with what we're having to go through, people have had to use the technology. It's just been thrown into
and their
it.
hands are full.
And maybe now that
because we have
some of these that don't like it and don't want to do it will be more apt to ask for help in doing something because they're a little more familiar with it, or they'll be more inclined to want to take it further. I'm hoping that's going to happen.
Tess, were you trying to say something?
No, I'm talking to somebody who's helping me with the library weeding.
Oh,
No, I thought maybe it was Tess trying to speak at the same time as Candy, and we couldn't hear it.
all right. I'm heading to the myths. So, of the 4 myths, how many of you, number 1, education
sure
is
if I got
broken, was
dropped
the
again.
most thought-provoking, and why? I know some people put it in their responses. Tess did.
Yes, I did. Number 1 was the one that stuck out to me about education being broken, because I'm a fairly new teacher for my age. I've only been teaching 9 years. But before that, I was a parent for longer than I have a teacher. And I heard those myths all the time on TV and stuff, and didn't know enough to know that it wasn't exactly the truth. And until I became a teacher and started learning about like some of the countries that we're compared to don't educate all of their children while we educate all of our children. So I can understand how people believe those things, because they hear them so much and don't really look into or understand the other side of the story.
How about myth number 2? Oops, sorry.
That's okay. I liked the myth number 2 because I get excited about new things. I like to learn new things, but it just kind of refocused me on the fact that the tried and true methods are still good if we can, weave them in with the new. What's new is not always the best. So that spoke to me.
This is true.
I also think sometimes as
I really appreciated his example at the speech where he showed the handwriting of Frederick Douglass.
Did she go out?
I think you're back, Tess. We lost you, but yeah, I agree. When he showed the primary document and it was in cursive, and he was talking about how many of our kids could actually read it, I do remember that as well. Christy, you were going to say something?
Chris, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to talk about, as an instructional coach, I often get to work with veteran teachers, and I think the thing about this is it gives us permission to continue doing what we're still doing well. I think there's a sense of sometimes, and I've been guilty of this as a veteran teacher myself, you attend a conference and you hear new information and you think you've got to go back and implement the new because you've got to stay current, you've got to stay research-based. But I think it gives us permission to hold on to what continues to work. And I think for one of the mantras that I think I'm going to go forward with as an instructional coach is we don't have to choose. You don't have to choose between teaching if it really works and technology. And that's that blended piece. So I think that there's a tremendous amount of value in him giving us permission to not abandon what we really know is works in our classroom.
I love it.
And I think we see this in the elementary level, in lower elementary, just in the reading recovery and with everything the county's done with Jan Richardson. The technology and those guided reading groups aren't there. Yes, the rest of the class is using them to give the teachers the time and to build on what they're learning, but these are tried and true ways that the kids are learning, plain and simple.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. Kathy Blades and I had an interesting conversation about the third one because we were talking about them being digital natives, and really they're tourists. because they're just visiting and they're doing the things they want to do, and they're great at the swiping, but not the clicking. I think Tess said that, but they're not really natives. They're just kind of on vacation.
That's one of the things that I really, parents think that the kids learn all this by osmosis. And it's just like anything else that we teach them at school. Yes, they may become good writers, great writers, or they may be great at reading, but they didn't start that way. And we have to teach all of those things. And and the same with technology. They come to, especially in elementary, of course, we see it at the beginning, but their skills are minimal, and they have to be taught so many different tech skills and use skills and typing skills and navigation skills, and all of that's part of technology instruction. And teachers, if we have a good technology instruction, then teachers are able to not have to do that instructing. If they have a technology lab or they're using that time to learn these skills, then the teachers don't have to also teach that on top of learning how to use this tool and using it for their actual curriculum. So there's a definite need in that direction as well.
Yeah, and what was it that he said about they need to be using the information to not just to practice or whatever, but to be integrating it into what they're doing, their projects and things like that.
I remember him saying they had to see a purpose in it, a purpose beyond 12th grade. How is it going to help them through life and beyond? If they could see a purpose, then they would be much more invested in it, and it would help them long term. I think sometimes, and I've been guilty of this too, we get so excited about so many different things that we don't do anything with depth. They learn the superficial, like I used to say was the cake frosting, because we can cover this amount, but we don't necessarily get to go deep into it so that they can get to the ingredients of it. And I think sometimes we just need to take a step back and kind of focus on certain things that we, as he said, are very strategic about the outcome. I think that would help the students that year, would help the parents on the back end. It would help next year's teacher, them moving up.
Most definitely. Did anybody have anything to say about myth 4?
I think that's just silly.
You what?
I think that one was just silly.
Yeah.
But I think we've
So
all
here are
been
the
in
truths.
places where that's happened. Here, use this.
That's ice.
It'll fix your everything, and there's no PD or no, you don't understand. The teacher doesn't understand what to do with it.
This is true, and we've
that's what I'm
unfortunately
thinking.
done
Like
that.
iStation, that's the station. Here's this to drive everything.
Yeah, like the school that did the iPads. We bought these here.
Can't believe y'all brought up iStation on a day like today, Friday afternoon. That was the state the state's. I don't think they're ever going to live that one down.
Yeah, we didn't put the state up there on that red slide with how the classroom, school district, your reflection. We didn't do that. I figured that'd be a whole nother conversation. So the truths are that it elevates what you do best. And when they was talking about outcomes must drive decisions, it made me think of the quote from Alice in Wonderland where she asks which road to take. And he says, where do you want to go? She says, I don't know. He says, it doesn't matter. If you don't have a goal or a target, then you're not going to hit it because it's not there. And then when he was talking about how to use it, all I could think of was Peppermint Patty and Marcy when they were dyeing eggs in the Easter Beagle, and she told her to cook the eggs, but she never told her how. So it created a lot of unnecessary frustration. And then of course, you matter. You're the person that's driving the instruction. I don't know if there's any discussion, but I just thought those were good things to bring up. So some of you completed your avatars about how you're awesome. And if you haven't checked out that slideshow, make sure you go see everybody's superpower. I know you all have superpowers. That's why you're here, because you're about being bold. But here are just a few. And just to remind you that you're awesome. You are driving our kids and making this work in this hard time. If you want to talk about how you're awesome, by all means, here's your chance. Okay, keep it to yourself. That's fine. We'll go on to the next one. We talked about this earlier, and Tess put the B there because he talked about putting the B in your brain for when we're planning. Goal first, then strategy, and then tools. And since he used the Beetlejuice example, we put that in there. Tess had a great idea. And I like
the key
this
was to
thinking,
remind us to,
because sometimes we just get set in the way we want to do things. This is how we've done it. But we need to be thinking about the goal first. What is it we want them to do? What strategies are we going to use? And in the Google Classroom, in the resources, when I was searching for things, I found a toolkit for rigor. I think it's Rigor and Relevance Toolkit, and it has all of the instructional strategies. Tess and I used that when we planned a fairy tale unit based on what we've learned from this. And it was really helpful, and hopefully it's something that you'll be able to use. But it's in the resource part of the Google Classroom. Oh, I can't move on. There it is. I went too far. Oh, you didn't need to see that yet. So here's the Rigor Relevance Framework and the SAMR. And I think it's kind of cool that Molly Holloman was talking about this in TPAC. And a lot of you responded to benefits of using one versus the other. And some people have had some really good insights. Would anybody like to share?
Molly, I think, did a really great job of providing an overview and then being more systematic about elementary setting and secondary setting. I know we didn't have great turnouts for those follow-up sessions, but she is having office hours next Wednesday, and hopefully some people will take advantage of that to be able to ask her some questions. But I thought she did a great job with some very specific examples about the difference between the two frameworks. And I think she also just took some of the burden off that maybe we all thought we needed to be in the redefinition phase all the time, or we needed to be in, quadrant D all the time. And that's just impractical. As I think she used the swimming analogy, you're just going to wear yourself out. And we know that that's not good for anybody, that moving through them and having the purpose and being very deliberate and focused about what you're doing, they all have their place in education. At least that's what I took from her discussions.
Well, I'm really excited because one of the things that I found when I was looking for information about this, and is this next thing. This is the totes bagoats. This is a pedagogy wheel, and you start in the middle, and you've got your create, remember, understand, your blooms, and it goes out to your action verbs, your activities, and then the tools. And if you look on the outside, there's your SAMR model. It's got all of the things. This was created by Alan Carrington, who's Australian, and he has a website called Designing Outcomes. And when I saw this, I just, a halo went around it. I thought this was the coolest thing ever. And you have this in your resources as well. But welcome. Here's the pedagogy wheel. So how are you planning on implementing Bold School framework for strategic blended learning? So it's part of your instructional process. What are your plans? Anybody?
Well, I think for me as an instructional coach,
Candy, can you hear us now?
Go ahead, Christy.
I think when I see the goal, the strategy, and the tool and that progression, I think it begins with the standard. And I think that I'll continue that language with teachers about unpacking the standard. I love, I'll continue to stress the mindset of pedagogy first and technology second. And I just think it makes sense. It will help teachers it will help me in where teachers sometimes they'll attend a conference or they'll hear about something from a colleague and they'll want to just try it out. And I'll be able to, I think, articulate language and say, let's back up for just a minute and start with the standard and then talk about the strategy. So I think it's just going to give me permission, I think, again, to have a more articulated conversation about beginning with standards and goals and then moving forward.
I would like
It
to
always
go
makes
off
me
of
think of Tomlinson and Mateek. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to go off what Christy said, because I kind of answered that question by thinking it would be nice to put it almost like into a template as a lesson planning tool, because I'm with Christy on the whole. I always start every lesson with, what is my content? What are my standards? What is it that I want to get across to my students, and then come up with other sorts of lessons where they can apply it and they're not regurgitating information, because I feel like students do that a lot. And then take that technology piece to see if there is anything that can enhance that lesson. But with so many new things that we have, we start strong and then it kind of falls by the wayside. So I thought maybe if I started by utilizing a lesson template, that would get me into this habit where it wouldn't just fall away. I would continue to use that blended learning that way.
Do you think you'll want the one that he has?
The ABCD? Is that what you mean, or that big tool with all that stuff?
You get when you get to the chapters, you'll see the framework he uses.
Mm-hmm.
He has one that goes through all the steps.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought about doing it a little bit kind of how like the ABCD was also, just to kind of keep track of where my lessons typically go, because I kind of feel like sometimes we might get stuck into one of those little quadrants. And if you kind of kept track of that, then we would be hopefully going more towards that D than staying at the A.
Yeah. I always think of
kind of where my brain went.
Jay McTeague, and always beginning with the end in mind. What is it you want them to know? How are you going to get them to do it? And how will you know they learned it? And that reminds me of this when you're planning. It's always a good way to start.
I did see that framework. I know what you're talking about on page 48 now. Yes, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to share?
I think at least part of what I took away was that he spoke about teacher confidence. And I believe that we have, as a profession, lost some of that, maybe with the implementation of social media and the amount of evaluation that we are under. This was kind of an aha moment for me, because we are the experts of our curriculum. We are the experts about where the kids are. And as things have become more online and people have been able to say whatever they want anywhere, that it really has maybe negatively impact our vision of ourselves. At least that's just totally my opinion. I just saw some connections with the two, that I think people have lost some of their confidence in being the expert in their room, the expert with the content, and the expert with technology, as Christy said, trying to, they've been trying to learn as they go as far as the technology. So if they don't know everything there is to know about it, they don't feel confident in it. So I would like to see teachers regain that confidence in who they are and what they're doing moving forward. I know that kids will benefit in a great way.
Our last slide for the day. What is your biggest takeaway? What was the aha, wow, blew your mind kind of thing that you got out of the book? Pick one or two. I could pick 3 or 4 or 5. I have sticky notes and things written all over this book.
I kind of already shared the aha I had about the confidence, but I also I'm hopeful about what's coming. This doesn't seem sometimes you've read, this is the latest, greatest book, and we read about it, and it's kind of, oh, it's exciting, but it's not practical. I at least am getting the mindset that what's coming is going to be more practical for our real situations, and that he's coming at it from a place that we can relate to, as opposed to a utopian classroom that none of us have, and a utopian district that doesn't exist, where everything is wonderful, and money's never an issue, and parents are all happy. So that gives me great hope, and I'm excited to see what he says, and that he's got something to back it up. It's not just his opinion. He's got things to back it up.
I think the last thing I put was education isn't broken, teachers aren't failing students, and technology is no magic bullet. And I think that's just a good, that just stood out to me. I guess that's my wow. Here's everybody. Well, I really appreciate y'all showing up and being part of this. I appreciate your patience because, boy, this was a trial and a tribulation. And thank goodness for technology because I've got the phone so I can hear your conversations. And now I can see.
I think I'll go to school for next week.
We'll figure it out. Tessa's going to have great luck next week. Tessa's going to be leading us next week for chapters 3 and 4. And we'll be meeting on the 22nd, 1 o'clock. Look for the link. And if you want to join the Slow Twitter chat, I'll have information about that. I got a few people who said that they were interested in that, which is wonderful. I thank you very much for y'all coming and joining us with this, and y'all stay bold.
Thank you, Candy.
Thank you, ladies.